horsepower, rear-wheel drive, and just about $50,000. This is the new Mustang GT. But at nearly the same price, rear-wheel drive, and pretty much the same power, and even though it's recently discontinued, we have the Camaro LT1. Being direct rivals for decades now, these two cars have a lot in common, especially in the case of delivering the most power per dollar. But in the day and age of turbochargers and at nearly the same price, rear-wheel drive as well, we have the Toyota Supra. While the Mustang used to just be a straight line car, it has improved vastly in handling to even measure up to something like the Toyota Supra, which is specifically known for back roads and tracking. The line between all three of these cars are blurrier than ever, which now means that pretty much all these cars somehow compete. All these cars are legendary, over 60 years of history with the Mustang, and well, the Supra is a Supra. And then we have Bumblebee from Transformers with a mind of its own. The Mustang GT is now on its 7th generation and it has a lot of history. It's known for being fast, affordable, good looking, but not really easy to handle. This new gen is on the same exact chassis as the previous generation, but it has a lot of improvements. You still have that glorified Coyote 5.0, which is awesome. It is a little bit different though because they gave it more power. It now has 480 horsepower and 418 pound-feet of torque. It's also got dual air intakes now and dual throttle bodies, which is supposed to increase airflow and reduce induction loss. With the performance package and the active exhaust, we actually put out 486 horsepower in this model, which is important because it's 1 horsepower more than the Hemi V8 engines. This means that the Mustang has more power than the Supra and the Camaro. Let's actually put that to the test. We're going to put this car in drag race mode. Launch RPM at 4,200. We have a acceleration timer, so let's start that. 0 to 100 and launch control ready. Okay, lots of wheel spin. And that's a little bit more than 100. It's actually pretty quick. It is rated to 60 miles per hour in 4.3 seconds, which is quite impressive. I don't know where the results are here. And yeah, this thing definitely feels a little bit faster than the Supra and the Camaro. Let's throw it around this corner. It's actually pretty good for a Mustang. It's solid. It doesn't feel like you're gonna kick out and kill yourself as easily as before. It actually feels rather planted, and this is just the GT, not even the Dark Horse. And also just as important is the fact that it sounds probably my favorite sounding car out of all these three, because it sounds absolutely amazing. Of course, the sound of the Camaro is also really good. That 6.2 liter sounds amazing as well. But I personally like this deep rumble that the Mustang Coyote engines have. It just sounds a little bit more tame, but also less raspy at the same time. I'm not sure how to describe it, but personally I like how this one sounds. And of course, compared to the Supra, it just hands down defeats the B58 sound any day. But that car still sounds pretty good with the pops and bangs, because I guess BMW. All three of these cars can be spec'd in an automatic. You can get a 10-speed auto in the Camaro or the Mustang, or an 8-speed auto in the Supra. But if you were to get any of these cars, I would really recommend the manual if you're trying to have fun. This is a great transmission. This Mustang in particular is equipped with a Getrag 6-speed, and it feels great. I love the weight to the shifter. It is a little bit heavier than a lot of cars, which I kind of like. It makes it a little bit harder to shift really quickly though. So if you're trying to bang gears, the Supra manual is actually a little bit better. And it's not the same transmission as the Dark Horse that gets a Tremec 6-speed, but this one's great as well. It's very forgiving, so even when you shift not so well, it makes it very smooth. And the active rev match in this car is addicting because the way you can downshift, it's just so good. You purposely end up going through every single gear just to hear that V8 engine sing. And you can daily this car perfectly fine. It actually soaks up all these bumps really nicely, and it does a good job of just being a good commuter car as well as a car that you can have fun with. This GT is equipped with the performance package, which gives it the Pirelli P0 summer tires, a 3.73 rear axle, a drift brake right here that we have, and active rev match, and these massive Brembo brakes front and rear. The rear brakes on this car alone is the same size as the front brakes on the other cars. All right, brake test from 100 kilometers an hour, 60 miles per hour. Okay, this is really good. These Brembo brakes can stop this car in under 100 feet at 94 feet, which is actually really good given that this car weighs about 3,900 pounds. This package also gives you firmer suspension, which really pays off in the corner. It's not overly stiff or anything because it's still pretty comfortable, and you just throw it in this corner real quick. It's pretty planted. It doesn't roll too much. You don't have too much body roll, but these seats could be a little bit more bolstered. I think you can get the bucket seats as well. This car takes corners a little bit better than the last generation. It feels a little bit more predictable. The back end will still kick out a little bit when you want it to, but it feels very controlled. It doesn't feel like you're gonna lose it that easily. You can put traction in half off, and it does a really good job of managing the rear end and making sure that you don't step out too much and end up hitting the ground. Okay, tight corner. Okay, a little bit understeer. Traction is still fully on. The front end still feels a little bit sloppy at times. It is a massive engine up front, and again, it is on the same chassis as before, so there's only so much you can do. They did tighten quite a few things up there, but it's still all right. The steering is a little bit loose, but if you did want a Mustang that's made for the track specifically, you should get the Dark Horse because that car is made for the track. It actually does about the same lap time as a BMW M4, which is insane for a Mustang. You also get the Tremec transmission in that car, which can handle a little bit more power and dedicated track performance parts. But this GT is still a blast to drive. Oh my god, it sounds so good. I cannot stop just saying it. And you also have a lot of torque down low. We're just in third gear right now at 80 kilometers an hour. Yeah, you got all that torque instantly. You don't get that turbo lag that you do in something like the Supra because it is NA. Even the best turbocharged cars cannot even compete with how responsive this engine is. I love all the customizability that you also have in here. It feels like a video game almost, but the driving experience itself is very raw. And all that tech doesn't get in the way of having fun or anything. It's not intrusive, and if anything, it actually adds to the fun with all the things that you can do here. Just coming into this corner again. Okay. The steering is weighted quite well, but it doesn't really add weight, so you kind of don't know where the front end is at times. But again, it actually is a lot better than the last gen. It feels very predictable. I'd argue that the powertrain and the suspension setup in the Mustang is better than the other two, but the steering just isn't as good as the Camaro, I think. I think that car is a little bit better in terms of what you feel in the front end of the car, and the Supra, it just handles a little bit better, but this is a great balance. It will 100% still put a smile on your face. This car is addicting. Like, it's just so fun. It's so good. Just making you happy when you drive it. You don't need any of that fake engine noise. You don't need any of that crap that you do get in all these fake performance cars. This car is just a Mustang, and It just does what Mustangs do best. I love the dedicated Mustang button here where you can customize so many different things in this car. You have all these different drive modes. You have your sport mode, your normal mode, your track mode, your drag strip mode, a slippery mode, and a custom mode, which you can customize so many different things in here. You can customize the steering, the traction, the exhaust, which you have 4 different modes that you can go through. You have quiet, normal, sport, and track, which we are in track right now, which is the loudest. And you can also customize the gauges, which is also really cool. There are so many different things that we can go through, which we'll get to in a bit. You also have this very customizable shift indicator, which you can customize the RPM at when the lights actually come on. And you can have the shift indicator either flash the tachometer or make the whole screen red, or just fill in like a BMW one, which is also really cool. It's just so much that you can change. You of course get your line lock and your launch control. But what's new is that they have this drift brake. This is actually an electronic handbrake, not a real handbrake. And Ford utilized that feature called drift brake, which means you can lock up the rear wheels and initiate a drift. It's insane that Ford included the drift brake in this car, because what the hell? No one would have thought about this. No other car manufacturer has had this much fun building a car. They just gave this car so much character. It is so playful. You definitely know that the engineers at Ford are having a lot of fun. They're actual car enthusiasts that designed this car. No manufacturer on earth has been crazy enough to do this. A freaking drift brake. It's actually ridiculous, but I freaking love it. Who needs a goddamn drift brake when you have this glorious 6.2 liter V8 with 455 horsepower and 455 pound-feet of torque? I am a little bit jealous that the Mustang gets an e-brake and this doesn't, and it has a lot more gizmos. However, this car is or was the most direct competitor to the Mustang. And even though it's a little bit less power and a lot less tech, this thing is still amazing. But where this car does shine the most is the handling, because I think this still handles better than the Mustang. The chassis on the Mustang is great, but it just lacks the engagement that this Camaro has. Okay, corner in. Oh, it feels good. The steering feels a little bit more responsive and easier to predict where it's going, unlike the Mustang where you kind of don't know where the front wheels are sometimes, but in the Camaro, I think they set it up just right. But if you do get the Dark Horse Mustang, it will be a little bit better. But comparing the LT1, which is a lower trim than the GT, this still feels a little bit better in the corners. It is also just as squirmy as the Mustang, and you can get that back out just as easily. And it makes both these cars so entertaining to drive. The transmission in this car, I do think, is a little bit better than the GT transmission. Not as good as the Tremec in the Dark Horse, but the shifter feels pretty much the same, but it's easier to shift fast in this car. It's much easier to roll through gears and just bang out 1, 2, 3, 4 in the Camaro. You do still get active rev match in here, but the heel toe in this car, the pedal spacing makes it so easy to get that downshift perfectly. Yeah, this thing is absolutely great as well. However, the transmission in the Mustang does age you a little bit more than this car. The active rev match is more customizable. Actually, everything is more customizable in the Mustang. This just feels a little bit older, a little bit more raw, which I guess some people do like. So if this is available to you, this is still a great option. Oh, okay. Traction's still on, but you can still get the back out a little bit. This thing is awesome. I love the sound of the 6.2 liter V8 as well, but it's just not as quick as the Mustang, even though it turns in with a little bit more confidence, and the transmission is arguably just a little bit better. The interior and literally everything else in this car just isn't up to par with the Mustang, because that car is just, well, more up to date. But because you can't even get the Camaro anymore, the closest yet most surprising competitor to the Mustang is the Toyota Supra, which is hands down the best handling car out of these three. It's the most balanced chassis. It's engineered by BMW, so it has a 50-50 weight distribution. It's lighter, it's smaller, and it is the king of handling. The Supra just feels like it has so much control, and it's very predictable. You just point and go. But it just doesn't have the same raw feeling as the Mustang. This still puts it at 382 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque from this wonderful B58 engine. And it has a very linear power band, plenty of torque down low, but nothing like that Coyote V8. It's still a forced induction car, so there will be lag. Even the best of them just doesn't compare to the linear power band of the Mustang engine. It has most of the tech you can ask for. It has adaptive suspension, but it doesn't have a valved exhaust though, which is fine because you don't really need it when you don't have the sound of a V8 anyways. You can get it in a manual transmission or an 8-speed auto, and the manual in this car is very direct. It's easier to shift that car faster than in the Mustang. It's basically the BMW ZF transmission, but Toyota pulled it apart and they re-engineered it to be more direct and engaging, which it is. It feels better than any BMW transmission, and it feels better than the Mustang Getrag as well. What the Supra also does really well is the combined fuel economy of 26 miles per gallon, which is way better than the 18 and 19 miles per gallon that you get in the Mustang and Camaro. The interior in the Supra is also, well, a BMW interior. It's upscale, it's high tech, it feels good, and it's a lot tighter than the Mustang, and there's also no rear seats in here. Meanwhile, the Mustang interior is actually very much like a BMW. You have the dual screen here, and if you were to get the premium version, they also connect like a BMW. You also have the double vents here, just like a BMW, and a 3-spoke wheel. And if you get the premium package, you will get leather seats, but I actually really like these fabric seats. Feel quite nice. You do get this 13.4-inch infotainment screen. It is sharp, it's crispy, it's pretty fast, and you get your wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It goes right across, and you can also crop it so that you can have other information in here. And you also don't get a physical HVAC center, but it is fixed to the bottom of the screen here. So I'm fine with that. As long as you don't have to dig through menus to access it, then you're good. You also have a lot of customizability in the screen, especially when it comes to like your ambient lighting and the colors that you can change for the dashboard. You can have 2 different colors, your primary and secondary color. It's actually pretty cool, and you also have a lot of different clusters that you can choose from. Your track mode, your sport mode, your normal cluster, this calm mode, which just pretty much shows you only what you need. And then you can also do the classic 67, 68 Mustang gauge, or the Fox body, or the SVT Cobra if you like these vintage gauges, which is actually kind of cool that you can do that. There's also even a quiet exhaust startup mode. You can program the time in so that you don't wake up all your neighbors starting up the car early in the morning or at night. Everything's kind of like a video game in here, which I honestly dig, like the fact that you have 2 big screens. I think Ford aimed this product for younger people like myself. As an iPad kid, I love these big screens that you have. They didn't make anything too annoying though. Everything's really easy and functional. You also get your 9-speaker system in here, which is good, but you can get the optional Bang & Olufsen speakers if you went for the premium. These seats are very comfortable. They're not too bucketed, but it's good for long drives. There's also your Mustang key. It hasn't changed since the last generation. Basic Ford key, the Mustang logo. And you also get back seats in this car, which is more usable than the back seats in the Camaro, and the Supra doesn't get back seats. So for emergencies, you can actually still use it. You also have a fairly decent 13.5 cubic feet trunk, and it's actually quite usable. The Mustang is a good blend of just muscle car and digital tech. Outside the Mustang, it hasn't really been totally redesigned. The front and the rear has a lot of changes, but it still shares a lot of similarities to the outgoing model, and I think there's nothing wrong with that because it looks great, especially in this grabber blue paint jobs. There's also a real vent up front, but only on one side. The other side is fake, and the hood vent is actually all real. You also get these blue brake calipers, and these wheels remind me a lot of BMW M wheels. The headlights are sharp. You also get auto high beams with them. The rear taillights are angled a little bit higher than before. You also get quad tips exhaust in the back, and the wing really ties the rear end together, although you can get it deleted if you don't like it. I just think that this car is so well thought through. And this car is not just fun and games, it's actually very livable. More livable than the Camaro and the Supra. It's also more comfy. The bumps and cracks in the road don't bother this car at all. And it's something I'd actually consider as a daily car. Just daily this car like a normal person and drive it like a civilized person, and it's calming. It's actually just a good commuter car. But when you're feeling bored and all, you can literally just throw this car in track mode real quick, downshift, and this car just genuinely makes you smile. It is so goddamn good, especially for the price. Given that this is only $52,000 USD as spec'd, or $62K in Canada, This undercuts the price of the Supra, and no, it doesn't handle as well as the Supra, but that's why you have the dark horse, which now ends up competing with cars like the BMW M4. The chassis itself is incredible, and not only is the Mustang able to compete with cars like these, but if you go all the way up the food chain to something like the GTD Mustang, which is essentially the same chassis vehicle, now it's competing with full-on Porsche GT3s, and that is insane. And while this isn't the GTD, for the fraction of the cost, it offers so many things that just trickles down to this car. You know, Ford engineers are actual car enthusiasts that built this car, not just executives that take the train to work or anything, because these guys definitely put their heart and soul to making the Mustang, well, a Mustang, one of the most legendary nameplates in the world. I feel like all new is a little bit incorrect for this vehicle because it still shares a lot with the prior Mustang, but don't fix it if it ain't broken. In today's digital age, a lot of cars are just littered with technology that just takes away from the fun. From either being too restrictive to all the digital annoyances that comes with a computer-controlled everything. However, the Mustang is still the same formula as it's always been, being pure, genuine, raw, fun. But instead of digitizing the wrong things that are annoying, Ford used it to their favor and made it an even more engaging and thrilling driving experience than ever. As cars like these face extinction, like the Camaro that's no longer with us, this very well could be the final V8 powered pony car from Ford. The Supra is a great handling car, it's a fast car, but like many Germans, it lacks the heart of something like this Mustang GT. It's just insane how much charisma and character this car has. When you're driving down an open interstate with the windows down and this magnificent soundtrack in the background, you forget about all your problems and you might just be smiling like an idiot in the driver's seat of this car. This car is just pure, genuine happiness, and Ford really did it with the Mustang because this is just a remarkable car. That is all, guys. Thanks for watching.